On this week's episode of the 20M podcast, we cover our first impressions of the incredible Genshin 4.0 Fontaine update and all of its magical and underwater goodness. Later, we jump right into Jumplight Odyssey. This is our first look at the early access build of the space colony management sim by Australian indie studio League of Geeks. Does Reno have what it takes to lead the people to the stars, or should she just resign to playing gacha for his bandos? Listen on to find out. This is the 20M podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the 20M podcast. How are you? My name is Arif, the co-host of the amazing show called the 20M podcast. I'm sitting here with my amazing co-host, the one, the only, the life and soul of everything content over here on this channel. Reno, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing? You're looking fresh today.
Thank you. I'm wearing the Legend of Korra t-shirt that I never get to wear.
Oh, I have not seen this one in the long sleeve. Is it a sweater?
It's a nice sweater. I got it for Christmas like ages ago. But it like Avatar. Let me go on this quick rant for audio listeners. Pop in the YouTube video for at least the first 2 minutes of this. But like Avatar Korra, like Avatar Last Airbender series, is great. But for some reason, she's blue in this shirt, and it reminds me of Avatar.
Oh
like
my
James
god!
Cameron's Avatar.
So
it's kind of like a weird crossover. Like I don't really understand the shirt. Like I think it was on Amazon. It was like from Amazon or something. But anyway, that's why I don't wear it so much. Like I don't want to be associated with James Cameron's Avatar. I want to be associated with
James Cameron could improve his his Avatar's reputation by collabing with this Avatar though. Like come on, like just make it happen.
They are water benders and fire benders essentially. Exactly. Anyway, Reno, how are you? What have you been up to?
I know we've both been like insanely busy this past month, but I did manage to get a couple of games in this past weekend, so I guess we can chat about that. But before that, was there anything you wanted to talk about to let us know?
No, I just wanted to let the audience know that I've been having such a boring week, and I get a flurry of texts from Mino yesterday, just like, oh my god, I'm at Summer Sonic and I'm enjoying the heck out of my week and I'm having such a good day and I'm seeing all the bands that you want to see, but screw you, Ara, for not being here. I'm having such a good time. Verbatim, I'm pretty sure that's what the text messages I got yesterday.
I actually want to mention that I did text you about Genshin while I was at the festival.
Yeah, you're right.
Expecting you to be like, what are you doing? Like, get out.
Pete went to singing his heart out on stage and you're like, oh my god, look at this Genshin thing. Like, you can't kick the Genshin out of Reno.
Well, it's a very exciting time for Genshin players. We can start with that. Shall we start with that?
Yeah, let's do it. Tell me a little bit about Genshin, because from what I understand, and just a quick plug, is that a couple episodes ago, we got to sit down with the one, the only Sevi Plays, one of the largest YouTubers covering Genshin guides and Genshin content and Hoyoverse stuff. But after that, I think the timeline of events, just purely coincidentally, was that Genshin 4.0 launched, which is the newest update to Genshin. And I'm assuming you've been playing a little bit of Genshin. So tell me all about it. Let's dive deep into it. Is it worth it? And will I get to finally pull Jean?
You get to finally pull
in this update.
Yeah, everyone gets a free Jean when you arrive in Fontaine. No, please don't quote me on that. So 4.0 came out recently, and you're right, it was super coincidental, but I think it was great because like Sevi's probably buried under the sheer amount of content and all the guides just to make. So I think we caught her at a good time. But as a lot of fans might know, Fontaine, it's inspired by France. Every year Genshin does an update and there's a new region. So last year was Sumeru, the year before was Inazuma. So this is kind of like this year's release. It is kind of like steampunky. It reminds me a little bit of Belobog in style, but in a sort of brighter atmosphere, because Belobog is like cold and miserable, but Fontaine is like bright, cheery. It's like what I imagine like summer in Europe is like, kind of thing. Like it's just really, really cheerful. At least what we've seen so far. I think there's supposed to be some underground exploration where people like less fortunate live in the sewers or something like that. So that's to come. But what's really interesting are obviously there's like a lot of new content updates, but the two main core mechanics I think is that you can now swim underground underwater. Trailer. Yeah, it's really fun and not as. I was very nervous seeing the trailer because I think we talked about this. Like underwater game mechanics are not my thing. Like I can't like. My earliest memory is like when you play Spyro and there's always like an underwater level and like you're trying to charge at enemies while you're underwater, and I always miss. Like I'm just like going there, and then the enemies are like
The physics are different. But like,
yeah,
it's so hard to swirl around in underwater as well.
and I think Crash has a. I'm pretty sure Crash like every
does.
Yeah, every platformer I feel.
The scuba thing. You remember the little turbines that Crash has to go like dodge or
Oh
something?
yeah. So the Genshin one feels a bit more intuitive. Like I mean, touch wood. I've only kind of dived in a little bit. But it feels easy to use. And what's, I guess, quite funny, at least what's like a meme in the community, is that prior to this, whenever you swim, you're just treading water above, with your head above the water, and your stamina bar rapidly decreases as you swim. And so drowning is like a very common thing that happens in Genshin, drowning and fall damage. But now it's like, wow, like there's no stamina bar, there's no air meter, so it's like infinite time underwater, which is pretty cool. And when you're underwater, there are enemies, but you can't fight them in the way that you can above ground. So what you do is you absorb the powers of sea creatures around you, and you use those powers against enemies, which I think is quite interesting.
That's pretty cool. I need to watch a little bit of gameplay footage for that, right? Yeah. But my thing is like, before we get onto a little bit more of the Genshin stuff, it's like, it's so funny how, I think we talked about this on a previous episode as well, but like if you're doing a live service game, or if you're doing a game that like constantly updates, it's so funny how underwater mechanics is like part of the 3-year roadmap. It's like, okay, DLC character is number 1, like then underwater level number 2, and the ability to swim. Because like Final Fantasy 14, I think was my example of it, right? In like Stormblood, the expansion, it's like there was the trailer of Stormblood. I think you could see a little bit of like swimming. You're like, oh my god, it's literally the exact same as Genshin. And then when the patch came out, it's like, yes, you can go underwater for that. But to me, it's like,
that's pretty funny.
It reminds me so much of like underwater levels just are so nostalgic for me because of Donkey Kong Country, because of all those platformers as well, where you have the little swordfish in Donkey Kong Country that you can use to go underwater and accelerate stuff, or the Mario underwater levels, like all that kind of stuff. So big fan of underwater mechanics, and especially the music in underwater levels.
We gotta take this off because it's a 20am podcast and you're here. But like, is there one in Kingdom Hearts?
Kingdom Hearts underwater level is the little when you go to Atlantica for the Little Mermaid, and in Kingdom Hearts 1 you get to like move around, you get to do combat and all that kind of stuff. But then you also do the
Sora gets a tail, right?
Yep. What? Yeah, Sora becomes a mermaid. Goofy becomes a little tortoise, and then no.
He does?
No, Donald becomes an octopus. Goofy becomes a turtle, I think. Okay. I'm going to put it up on screen. We'll do it. And Kingdom Hearts 2 is just purely a mini game, which is a little bit disappointed. But at least there is an underwater level in Kingdom Hearts, the Kingdom Hearts Compendium.
The underwater arc. Every game goes through it. Every game has to do it.
But tell me more about Genshin 4.0 before we get to another topic here. Because
I want to mention the last thing about swimming, which is more interesting than absorbing the powers of sea creatures. But so when your character's swimming, for some reason, like Hoyoverse decided to censor their butts.
Oh, okay. That's surprising.
With some like weird, it's not bubbles, because bubbles would imply that you guys are just like farting all the time. Yep. It's just like some kind of weird like not foamy, like just like water
mist,
waves. Yeah. So like, I don't know like why suddenly they decided like, oh, we better not show like butts because people are gonna do weird things. Because like, I mean,
have you not seen the Genshin climbing like video montages? You know what I mean?
So every character, whether it's a guy or a girl, whether it's whatever shape or form, like they're swimming, and then there's just this like little cloud that's following them behind, that's just like protecting their modesty. I'm sure people will figure a way out to...
Sure, yeah. It's like the Sims, uncensoring, like when Sims are naked, they have like the censors, like people are trying to like hack around it or something.
Trying to hack around those things or something like that. Like there was this other time when I was like streaming Genshin, there was this thing in my community where people like, mommy character step on me, daddy character step on me type of thing, right? So like I had a community member help me out with this particular puzzle in Genshin. I was like, oh, like thanks so much, man. They're like, oh, like can you do this thing for me? I was like, oh, okay. And then he's like, oh, follow me here, and he like teleport to this mountain in Genshin, and it's like, oh, come all the way up here. I'm like, okay, like this is really weird. And like and we get to the top of the mountain, and he like figures out this way. There's this like, you can kind of clip into the mountain when you're climbing, but you're not climbing upwards, you're climbing like this way. So you're in a climb position there. And he's like, okay, now step on me.
That's golden.
Yeah.
That's good. Never underestimate the Genshin community, man.
Yeah,
Geniuses. That's golden.
The launch of Sumeru meant that you got the final element in Genshin, which was Dendro, because Dendro wasn't a part of like the first 3 updates. So everyone was thinking like, oh, with Fontaine, like what could they create that was bigger and better than like an entire new element, right? So what they have now is this thing. There's like a new system on top of the elemental system, and the energies are called Numa and Uisia. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Let me know if I'm doing it wrong in the comments. And it's when I first heard of it, it sounded like yin and yang because these are like opposing energies. And so basically, all Fontaine characters will have one or the other, and the main character that you have also has that too. And then various enemies around in Fontaine have one or the other. So you can use that to your advantage to attack them with it, and then it greatly reduces their defense. And if you are of one energy and they are the other, if you hit them, there will be some kind of like explosion, like an annihilation reaction or something like that. So I think that's pretty cool. Like adding just this extra layer, and it's only in Fontaine. Yeah, very cool.
That's awesome. And my last question for Genshin 4.0 is, how are the characters? Because as we saw in the trailers, it was very like... Actually, let me just pause and let me say that like... the aesthetic around it reminds me so much of, and I don't know if this is fully accurate because I haven't jumped into Genshin 4.0, but it's like Arcane when they do the little like festival, like the science festival, where it's like cyberpunky cultural celebration and like everybody has top hats and all that kind of stuff. But how are the characters in Fontaine? What is the dream pool right now?
Right now there's only 2 Fontaine characters available. So you got Linny, who is voiced by the same person who voiced Blade in Star Rail. Blade is like absolutely insane. Linny is like a tiny little guy who does magic tricks, and I just think the range, the absolute range, right? He's really cool. I really like it. He's a bow user, and they really put the element of just like magic tricks and mystery, very like prestige like. So when he's shooting, he's doing his normal attacks. At one point he like turns into a card, like a giant like card, and then like kind of disappears a little bit. And then there's also like he does a little bursting, and then like you go around as like a cat in a hat, which is like kind of cute.
That's awesome.
They're bouncing around. And then Lynette is the other one, which is a free character. So I believe like anyone, I think as long as you finish like the first Archon Quest in Mondstadt, anyone who logs into Genshin, you get a free Lynette. So she's like the sibling to Linny. She's a 4-star character. She's a animal user. Also has a lot of like magic theatrics. She's the assistant. So he's like the magician. She's a magician's assistant. Mm-hmm. So that's it for the main characters so far. But like, yeah, in general, like it does feel very much like Arcane. Speaking of like top hats, there are like dogs with clothes, like pet dogs with clothes in Fontaine. Like they're just like, I was like walking in, I was like, what is that thing? Like, is that like a child? It was just like a dog. And then there's this other type of creature. I'm going to butcher the pronunciation. I think they're called Melusines. They just look like little furries. And they drive the aqua bus. It's like this like boat that takes you through Fontaine, and it's really, really beautiful, really nice scenery. And then they talk to you. It's like being on a tour bus. But yeah, they're just... I don't know. They're just there. I guess if you play, I haven't played the Archon Quest yet, but I guess when you play it, you'll find out more about the characters and who all these people are.
Yeah, and I think it's like super cool as you talk about like just generally what there is available for players. Is like, again, like here on the Swinia podcast, I feel like we talk about a multitude of games and we always come back to like our staples, right? And I know Genshin and Hoyoverse type games are a little bit more of your staples, but to me it's such a fascinating thing because like a lot of times you forget how much like whenever successful expansion drops in modern video games, I think are a huge thing to celebrate, because as much as there are a multitude of live service games, very few of them actually hit that level of like renown that a lot of people still respect and play. And although there might be a little bit of downfall here and there, I think you said this a couple episodes ago, but it's like there's a resurgence in players whenever a new expansion drops. So it's just so cool to observe it in the, like, as somebody who barely consumes too much Hoyoverse content and games. It's so cool to have you kind of like talk through that, because it's like, again, I'm thinking about Final Fantasy 14, I'm thinking about Destiny, I'm thinking about Hoyoverse, like, you know, Genshin and Star Rail. But the fact that the team was able to pull this off in like a 4.0 and make it so big, which is just like such a cool thing to celebrate, in my opinion. I'm glad it's still going strong, at least.
It is. I have a few more points to say just before we wrap the Genshin part up. So the first one is I do want to apologize to all the folks, especially like our TikTok community, because I know we did a clip a while back that was 4.0 is not new player friendly in Genshin. I stand corrected. So basically, if you at least do the first Archon quest in Mondstadt, which most people would have done, it unlocks a teleport waypoint all the way at the other side where the start of Fontaine. So you can actually skip all that nonsense and go straight there. So it's possible. They fixed that. They've been listening. I think with Inazuma,
they saw your clip.
They saw my clip and were like, well, hang on. We gotta squash these rumors. So that makes it a lot more new player friendly. And there's a few other things right now. It's I can't think of at the moment, but they've made a lot of effort to, because it's so tough for these games. I found that with like Final Fantasy 14, like to get to where all my friends are at, like there's just so much to do. And you can't like skip all over that. So I think Hoyoverse are doing a lot to make sure that new players can come in and still have a good experience.
Absolutely.
And then what were the other two things I want to say? Oh, right. Just quickly going back to the characters. Man, like I posted this screenshot of one of the new bosses in our group chat and like no one replied to me. But it is so beautiful. Like I just think it's amazing. So we'll have footage or a picture up or something. But they are two robots and it's a guy, it's a male robot and a female robot, and they're dancing. So these are like dancing robots, but they are also like bosses. And they dance and then they split up and they do these different they have different battle mechanics depending on which one you technically choose to fight. And the music as well, like there and then also in Fontaine, it feels very much like Nutcracker Prince kind of vibes.
I can
so
see that.
super beautiful. It's like, wow, like this is such a cool idea for a boss.
I saw that in passing. I saw the text message in passing and I did not respond to it.
You're just like happy for you. Happy for you. It's fine.
Any other final thoughts on Genshin 4.0?
I'm very excited. And I think like going back to what you're saying like about the resurgence, like I'm pretty sure there were like 6K concurrent viewers on Twitch like before the drop, and on the day of the drop it was like 137,000.
Yep.
So definitely big updates like these are what people need. Want.
Yep. That's
cool.
awesome.
Yeah.
Tell me, so transition here, global shift in topic. We're heading from a France-inspired world in Genshin, and we're shooting for the stars. And unfortunately, we're not talking about Starfield. But tell me a little bit about another game that you've been playing, Reno, that I've been seeing a lot of coverage on Twitter. Jumplight Odyssey.
Yeah, so I'm really excited. I was able to play like the media early access for Jumplight Odyssey. I've actually first saw them in person at Bit Summit a few months ago. So they are by an Australian studio called League of Geeks. A lot of people might know them for their previous game called Armello. And I believe Jumplight is also backed with support from Kowloon Knights and also with support from Victoria State Government, which is like the state that Melbourne is part of and where the studio is. So there's a lot of like cool names behind it, a lot of growing support. I think the Australian independent game scene seems, from the devs I've spoken to recently, a lot of them have a lot of good things to say about the support they're getting. But anyway, so Jumplight Odyssey is how would you describe this game? It's definitely not something I've ever played and not something I ever thought I would play. It's a real-time colony sim with heavy strategy, and it is heavily inspired by this game called FTL. I think what does that stand for? Like Faster Than Light, which is another space colony sim roguelike, which came out, I think, around 2012. But Jumplight Odyssey is a bit more, if you look at the image, if you look at the trailer or like the image and stuff, it's very, again, like that Saturday morning cartoon kind of aesthetic. Whereas like FTL is a bit more like kind of serious, kind of like your Age of Empires style, but like space. So Jumplight Odyssey is a bit, I feel like, more lighthearted version of that. And yeah, I guess that's what you do. Like it's kind of hard to explain. Like you play as like the captain of the ship, and what's happened, like the backstory is that you are on the ship and you're being chased by these aliens called the Zootopans. So they destroyed your planet, and then you guys are kind of like the I don't know, refugees or like the remaining people from that planet on the spaceship. And so while you're doing the management stuff, day-to-day stuff and all of that kind of thing, there is this ongoing pressure of the Zootopans like following you. So every time like you're building stuff, you're controlling people, you're managing things, you have to keep in mind that you need to keep jumping, and your goal is this and this thing called the Forever Star, and it's apparently like this mythical place, and it feels very very much like, I don't know, very reminiscent of some other like high fantasy kind of stories. Like I'm sure you can probably think of that when it comes to mind. Like chasing for this like dream paradise, like where they're going to be like it's going to be like a safe haven. But in the meantime, you just have this ongoing pressure of people chasing you, and you just keep moving from space to space. Yeah. So
Yeah, it's like funny because as we talk about it from a high level, right? My initial reactions to Jumplight Odyssey was that like I'm such a sucker for cartoon aesthetics, like Saturday morning cartoon aesthetics. As like we talk about Hi-Fi Rush, we talk about a lot of other games in that similar vein. I think like Fields of Mystria was another one that is like kind of that old '90s anime. I know it's not exactly the same, but just this era of cartoons that don't look like cartoons over the past 10 years. It's just like such a time and place. But to me, like on a macro level, it's like, we're seeing a lot of games in the space genre. I think historically there's always been space simulations. They've always been a huge hit. They've always been like a very specific part of the games community. But it's quite funny because like I'm thinking of like Starfield obviously is like the big elephant in the room. Like this game space, like obviously a lot of mechanics that are probably in Jumplight Odyssey will be in Starfield as well, just from a conceptual standpoint and a gameplay standpoint. But Starfield is probably going to be the biggest game like of the year as well, right? Like that has yet to be released. But then I'm thinking about like we even have like local folks like Kaigan Games. I think they announced Null Space a couple months back, which is like they're also getting to the space like simulation modding, like ship modding like genre. And then also it's rumored that Cory Barlog, director of the recent God of War game, not God of War Ragnarok, but the Resurgence, and director of God of War 2, he's been teasing for the past couple of years that his next project, Sony Santa Monica, will also be a space game, right? So it's interesting how like space is coming back in a way, even though it's always kind of been there, but more people are taking on this this approach. But I'll just quickly say before I know I want to walk through a little bit of your experience here with Jumplight. It's like it's genius to have this aesthetic for a space game, because personally the reason why I don't like a lot of space games is because it seems so like technical and numbers oriented and like super nerdy, and like I'm a big nerd, right? But like it just seems like over hyperly nerdy and stale and boring and too mechanical. But this is kind of like, it reminds me a little bit of Futurama, you know what I mean? And it's like, oh, probably mechanics are probably the same, but like it looks fun and cartoony and like hip and like, I don't know, bright. But I want to get to you, like what are some positives of your experience in Jumplight Odyssey, and then also what are some of the pitfalls as of your early access playthrough?
I think you've hit the nail on the head with the aesthetic and everything. Like this is definitely not the kind of game I would normally play, and I'm also with you, probably even more so than you are. Like I'm not normally like a space setting kind of person, but the way for very similar reasons, like it seems very technical, it seems like too hard, too much management, too much like work. But the way that Jumplight Odyssey conveys their message is very romantic. It's like a very romantic expedition to space. This theme of hope that kind of transcends throughout. Like the hope meter for the game is basically the end game. Like when you run out of hope, like the game is over. So they've got a lot of they put a lot of human and heart into a genre that you would normally expect to just be like very kind of robotic in that sense. So I got media early access, and I played the Euphora Odyssey, which is like the main one, and it comes with the tutorial. And in the guide that was given to me, it was like, you really need to play the tutorial. To me, being typically me, I was like, I can do it. I died in like 5 seconds. Like I swear, it was awful trying to figure it out by myself. The tutorial is so helpful, and for me, it felt like a mix of. I did a review for Hot Jam, and we can put a link in the description as well. But I called it kind of like a mix of like micromanagement as well as like micro and macro management, because you are doing like macro level stuff where it's like you need to make sure the colony thrives and survives, right? So you got to put things like, you got to build rooms. You have to, like, for example, biomass is like one of your resources that you need to keep cultivating. So you need to have like these like little algae farms or other like organic farms. And then at the same time, each room needs to have like an oxygen like supply, otherwise your people can't come in, they'll just die in there. Needs like a power supply, and there's just all these other macro level things where you got to keep the economy going. But at the same time, it's like individually, like you've got all these little people, and sometimes they're stressed, sometimes they're tired, and you got to figure out like what to do with them. And I wrote about this in the review, but my so there's like 4 departments. There's like the supply, combat, scientists, and engineers. So these are like your divisions that manage the ship. And so I think it was like my supply official who was like really stressed and traumatized from like a fire that had broken out on
Sorry,
the
I shouldn't
ship.
be laughing.
And I was like, I don't know what to do. And the tutorial had already wrapped up and it didn't teach me how to like, resolve trauma from my employees. So I was
Press
like,
A to resolve trauma.
but I realized like, I could get Princess Euphora, who's like the captain of the ship, to inspire her. So I was like, like I did that. I was like, hey, go talk to her. Talks to her and then like inspires her and she feels a bit better, but she's still like really stressed and like kind of is like dragging her feet. Like you can see, I think like it's like a debuff if they're going through something. It's like, they move slower if they're injured and things like that. I was like, man, like what's going on? And then I was like, like I really don't want to do this, but like I think I need to like transfer you out of your role.
My God. No. My God. There's no improvement plan whatsoever. It's like, we're going to let you go.
Oh my God. I was thinking, where's the performance development plan to help with this? And I'm like, I'm so sorry. And I don't know if there's any ramifications in the game. It didn't seem like there were, but like I picked someone else and like, all right, you're the new department head now.
Unqualified, you know what I mean? Like
literally, I like just got the intern in. I felt so bad, but look, maybe they are able to rest now.
What, did you kill them? Did you throw them off the space? Why did you say it like that?
They're able to take a mental health break.
Oh my God.
The other thing,
this is why we are not in charge of a large organization. That
was literally my tweet. I was like, I play this game and it made me realize that I'm not fit for managing a space colony. That's awesome. There's another thing as well that kind of boosts morale in the game, and it's a pig.
Okay, yeah, I've seen it in the trailer.
Yeah. I managed to speak to Trent, who's one of the founders behind League of Geeks when he was in Japan, and I was like, yeah, what's up with the pig, man? He's like, why not? I was like, you're right, why not? So the pig is kind of like the mascot, and I think if you pet the pig, it also like boosts morale and things like that.
Yeah.
But I think that's what I love about Jumplight. Like again, like Saturday morning cartoon doesn't take itself too seriously. Like, why is there a pig? Of course, there's a pig. Like, it just feels like something that's very natural in like a Buzz Lightyear of Star Command kind of episode. That kind of
thing. What else does it remind you of? Because like I said, like it takes inspiration from so much. But like when you're pitching it to people, what else? Like, what other properties? What other games? What else does it remind you of?
When I was watching the trailer, I was watching someone play at Bit Summit and having a chat with the folks. I wanted to play it, but it was it was very busy. And they were like talking and like it's loud and I could barely hear what they were saying. I'm just like nodding and like okay. And but as I was watching, I'm like, this really feels like that Daft Punk music video that I really love. And I was like, and I turned to him and I was like, do you know Daft Punk? And like, do you know the Daft Punk video? And he looked at me and was like, yeah, of course. And like, I think he'd been saying, Leiji Matsumoto, who's the manga artist who is behind the music video. Well, not the music video, but the art style, right? I think he'd been saying that, but I didn't quite catch it. So it's quite funny that like we're both in the conversation, but I independently come to the same conclusion just from watching the trailer. So I think it was just one of those moments when, I as a developer, probably it's like quite nice, like, oh, they see my reference, they see my vision. So pretty much straight off the bat, like 90s anime, Leiji Matsumoto, he's a real legend in the industry. So there's Interstellar 5555, which most of us know from Daft Punk, but there's also Space Battleship Yamato, which it really feels like. And again, it's just the vibe of it. It's not that the art style of Jumplight is particularly anime in the same way like, Genshin is anime, right? But you can just feel it through the gameplay or through the depictions of space. And also, as I was playing it myself, and growing up with a lot more like Western cartoons, like stuff on Disney Channel, there was just something about it that reminded me of just, like watching Buzz Lightyear and Toy Story, the way in that first thing when he doesn't even realize he's a toy and he's just like super romantic about space and really just like passionate about it. You can feel that as well. And I don't know if this is my own personal take, but like Princess Euphora, I really thought she was like a Princess Bubblegum kind of like stand-in. I think it's probably the crown that they both wear. It looks very similar, but I was like, oh, this kind of feels like, Adventure Time, kind of like a 2000s era kind of cartoon as well. So
I agree.
Yeah.
It's like a medley of like some of the older stuff. Cause like, I think, Buzz Lightyear Star Command is like that cartoon and that like era is like, oh, it's spacey but colorful and poppy, but it also reminds me a lot of like the way 80s Transformers was, where it's like it's modern, it's space, it's like new, but also it's so colorful and poppy and like so cartoons, as opposed to like what I think when we think about cyberpunk usually and like more how would you say, just technical designs when it comes to sci-fi, it is like gray and I don't know if Baroque is the right term, you know what I mean? But like just that same monotonous kind of like shade. So I do miss a return to colorful space, like a hyper saturation left, right, and center, but in a way that is like, oh, I guess that does make sense, right? But yeah, that's really cool. I feel like it's, I mean, it reminds me a lot of like Fallout Shelter as well, just like the small management sim kind of stuff, but like in a way that is like Zoo Tycoon as well, as a reference to our previous episode where we talked about games that we wanted a remake of. Like I'm such a sucker for management sims, but like I haven't played them since like Zoo Tycoon, like properly played them since Zoo Tycoon back in the day, right? So I'm super intrigued, but I think they nailed it with this like a balance of aesthetic with deep mechanics, So I feel like this is one that could spur a lot of like really funny stories as people play it.
Yeah, absolutely. I did have a couple of challenges, but and I think a lot of it was just sort of like bug related, which I'm pretty hopeful that the team will resolve by the time early access, which by the time this recording will be in like a couple of days. Which is just that because there's like the micro and macro, like it was a bit difficult to figure out like what I could do and what I couldn't do. As in like I wasn't sure if like I can't do this because I can't find it on the menu and it wasn't told to me in the tutorial, or I can't do this because it's just not part of the game. And then also just like other little things like it was okay, this is not really a little thing, but so as I was mentioning before, you have to jump from like space to space, I don't know, like orbit to orbit, and to do that you need to have Jumplight fuel. So while you're doing all the day-to-day management stuff, you need to make sure like the engine room is running smoothly, they're accumulating Jumplight fuel in the cartridges, and you've got all those like stuff there. And so I was like, okay, I have like good foresight. I will start building these things before I need it, so that when the enemy starts to come, I'd be like, oh, I've got all this fuel ready, right? But like no matter what I did, like nobody would like come and like build it. Like I was like, so what you got to do is you have to set it up very like sim style, right? Okay, like I'm gonna put this here, and just like lock it in, and then like click like start build or confirm build, and then you've got it. And then I think it's the two core departments that really need to help. So one is the supply department; they have to bring the items, the resources there, and then the engineering team have to build it. So I'm like, all right, do this, and then there's a button there that you can also do as like prioritize build. So like prioritize bringing supplies, prioritize doing like building it. And like no one came. I'm just sitting there like, oh, maybe I'll just need to fast forward the game. I just like fast forward. I'm like how long is it meant to take? I'm like watching it, and I see people going in and out of the room, and it's like so frustrating. Like not in like I'm an angry player, but in like a funny way. It's like, I'm management. No one is listening to me.
I spent my career trying to get to this position, and nobody has an ounce of respect for me.
I'm like, hello. So I'm pretty sure that's a bug. I don't know. Maybe like I didn't confirm something somewhere, but I'm just sitting here being like, where is my bill? Where is my bill? So I can't even do it myself, right? I'm just sitting here as like the omnipotent God here, just like controlling people, and I can't actually do it myself.
That's really funny. And then I guess like as we come to a close for Jumplight Odyssey, because from what I understand, it is coming out in early access, if I'm not mistaken, or something along those lines. So a lot more people will get to experience some of the things that you're saying, but it sounds like there's a roadmap for general improvement until full access launch. But what, like how else, who is this game for? Like who should jump into this? What other experiences do you think need to be mentioned with your time with Jumplight Odyssey?
I think you should try it. I think you really like it. Like the aesthetic is like so you. When I was playing, I was like, that sounds like you. And you also like management sim. So this feels like a kind of a good, I don't think it's like, I don't think it's fair to say it's like a light management sim, but I just think like the storytelling and all of that is probably what will get non-traditional like space colony sim management type people to give this a try. And also, at the time when I was playing it, there was only just like one Odyssey available. And then I think they had like a free mode where you just like endlessly build stuff and like don't have to worry about the story progressing. But it seemed like based on like the upcoming roadmap, there'll be like other arcs that you can play where you might not be Princess Euphora, you might be like some other leaders as well.
Well, that's super cool. Yeah, I think definitely. And it's just like, it's quite interesting because I need to give a shout out to the folks at Iterative, because like the Iterative Collective, because they sent us codes for Homeseek, which is a game that I've had, but I haven't been able to play. But I think it's by a Greek developer, but for those that don't know, the Iterative Collective is like a Southeast Asian based publisher, but they're publishing games for all around the world. And one of the games that they sent me was this was Homeseek, which is also like a post-apocalyptic management sim, right? So when you talk about like where we are in the games industry and like what kind of games are coming out or what things are being promoted, especially on the independent side of things, it seems like more people are taking a stab at like management sims this way. But I don't know if that's accurate in terms of like more people are taking a stab at it, but it seems like they've been filtering up on my timeline or my radar a little bit more. So I'm excited. Like, again, the diversity of games is something that I always like am an advocate for. Like, not everything has to be Hades, right? And like Hades inspired, especially after Hades. And not everything has to be like a AAA action adventure game. So I just love where we are in games. But this one, Jumplight Odyssey, definitely seems like just aesthetically like I want to play the heck out of that. I want to have a good time with that one.
I want to watch like a cartoon about it.
Yeah,
really, like just like give me
like a
prologue.
yeah,
cartoon. Yeah.
Exactly.
I didn't
Play
mention that yet. If you play I think you've seen the trailer. You've played the trailer, but like the voice acting and then the epic music, like that space. It's not Star Wars, but it's like the fanfare, like that kind of thing. And then just the way that the voice actor who like conveyed the story really just felt like I'm about to watch like this amazing like TV show.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that. That's awesome.
Good stuff. Yeah.
Good stuff. Cool. Well, I guess like before we wrap up the show a little bit, I just want to mention a couple other things in the games industry that like I'd be remiss if we didn't mention. So I think the first thing is that like it is August, and I saw a tweet out there that I didn't realize, but there's a lot of like Southeast Asian milestones that are happening, cultural milestones, historical milestones that are happening. But as it relates to the games industry, I think we have a couple friends at the Philippine Game Dev Expo, and so neither of us are there or covering that show. But if you want to check out some coverage, Virtual C I think has been doing a lot of stuff out there. So I think Kenzie. From Virtual C, like flipping celebrity status, taking pictures. Well, yeah, exactly. I think like Kenzie and June's stuff on Twitter, just covering casually. I'm assuming some stuff will come out after, but like updates on the show and meeting people and seeing what games are there is just super cool. So I think that's the first ever Game Dev Expo in the Philippines. So it's just so cool to see that ecosystem being built up as well. And I know major love to like shout out to Law Mage Academy, shout out to Love Burb. I think games that I've had on my radar, but even more so now there's like so many more games that I want to put on my wish list. So major love to that. And then I think recently the Lazy Mondays released a Hari Game Indonesia, which is kind of like a showcase of Indonesian games past and that have come out, and if I'm not mistaken, some that might be releasing soon. And I've just been getting a couple texts from folks in the industry to be like, "Yo, have you seen this? Is awesome, right?" And I do genuinely think it's flipping awesome. So I don't consume too much of the Lazy Monday stuff because it's all in Indonesia, and you know how bad my bahasa like is, But just as a like production to celebrate Southeast Asian / just like generally independent games, like any way to further that really excites me. So I'm gonna go watch Hari Game Indonesia later this weekend because I haven't sat through the whole thing, but it just looks awesome. It's a celebration of Indonesian games, and I think they got developers to talk about their games as well. So similar to stuff that I've done in the past, and obviously all the folks that some of y'all might know here, but celebrate a lot more independent games, especially here from Southeast Asia. And there might be some other stuff in this realm coming up soon as well. So it's just a good month for the indie game scene here in Southeast Asia.
Yeah, it's super exciting. No, great shout outs. I'm going to check that out as well. The Hari Indonesia Day. Very cool.
I just can I end with one really funny story?
Sure.
Okay, so most of y'all know, a friend of the show, Burhan, is on Twitter. For those that like, I don't know, I ever know how to describe him. He's in the games industry. Like he tweets about social issues and always blows up on Twitter because of it in a good way. But also a cat dad and like just somebody who's like flipping awesome. But PlayStation Asia, I think, has a sale for Malaysia's National Day, like Malaysia's independence, and they're putting a discounted PS5 price on there. And Burhan had this tweet out where he's like, because he has like 2,000 followers or so, right? Which is like, if every Twitter follower of mine gives me 1 ringgit, which is the equivalent of like $22, like 22 cents, US dollars, He's like, I could afford this PlayStation. And it's like a bit and it's a joke. And he put his little like QR code to like do money transfer. And I think like, at the time of this recording, he's like 50% through his like goal to raise funds for a PlayStation from the general Twitter community. So I want this bit to go through so bad because I think it's flipping hilarious. And it's also a celebration of games. And like, I don't know, it's been going around in Malaysian Twitter a little bit. I think it's like over like 20K like impressions or whatever on that tweet. But God bless Borhan and God bless like game meme culture for like, you know, I want to buy a PlayStation. If everybody donates me $1, I can totally buy PlayStation 5. Like, it's just so awesome to see. So if you have the spare cash, if we want to further this funny bit, go check out Borhan's Twitter. I think it's hilarious. Have you seen it?
Of course, I've seen it. I've been like watching it. Like just I think the quality of the memes he posts with every update is worth more than 1 ringgit. Like that alone is like grounds for like, all right, you should take my 1 ringgit. Like he's provides a lot of great commentary, that and also like just like generally, but also I think he has a separate handle that helps you, that highlights like discounts in video games. Yeah, so he's a good dude, and I hope he gets to his goal.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just a funny one. But I guess as we come to a close, Reno, what are you up to this upcoming week? Are there any things you want to announce? Are there any features that you've written that have been released or have yet to be released for us to keep up on?
Well, there's like what we mentioned earlier. Like I did early access review of Jumplight Odyssey, so we'll drop the link below. It's to Hot Jump Games, and a publication I've been working with who highlights a lot of independent games. And also, finally, my article/interview with the folks at Wodan who made Shinonome. We talked about them in our Bit Summit episode, so make sure to check that out for our Bit Summit coverage. But yeah, I managed to get that in, and that's now out on GamesHub. I'm really, really happy with that one. Really proud of it.
Yeah, I've been seeing those making the rounds, and I think it's awesome. I said this to you in private, but I feel like every single time I open Twitter, you have a new article that comes out, and you've been really like prolific in your work. So if you guys haven't read Reno stuff and coverage all across the different places that you write for, do yourself a favor, because this is kind of like unfiltered stream of consciousness, kind of like casual thoughts. But if you want to like read properly articulated, like very, very just great writing, check out Reno stuff there.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. You ruined my outro.
No.
After I come, just get out of here. What do you want?
All right, no,
I was kidding. What were you gonna say?
Nothing. I was not gonna say.
No, what were you gonna say? I was
Nothing.
like, we've already side rocketed. You know.
I was gonna say it would be great to have people read it besides RF and my mom. All right, read my stuff.
Yeah. But with that, everybody, thanks for joining us for the 20M podcast. A little bit of a shorter one for us this time around, covering a little bit of the updates. I think mostly just to give everybody an update, we have some other projects and announcements that will be coming up on the 20M social pages. So if you haven't followed us or subscribed to us on YouTube, I think you're going to see a little bit of a change in some content and some stuff that we haven't tackled before that we're both really excited about. So hit the subscribe button if you're on YouTube, tell a friend, share. If there's a game that we mentioned, we'd really appreciate it if you just like share it along, because we have some really stupid conversations that I think are hilarious, but like only a certain people like can relate to. So if you have a friend that has played Zoo Tycoon or likes Futurama, send this video over to them. But follow us on all social channels at 20M Podcasts. We've been putting a lot of announcements on Twitter and Instagram especially as well, and then all our clips across those, and including TikTok. Our previous episode, Rito, tell us about our previous episode if you want to move on to another episode of the 20M Podcast.
Our previous episode was when we reviewed Vemba, and we both cried in various capacities. I didn't expect it. We go into it in a lot of detail. If you want to see us cry, like I guess that's if that's your thing, definitely check out the Vemba episode. It's a good one, and it's a good game.
Yeah, and again, major love to the folks at Pop Agenda for giving us review codes for that. Like, it was an awesome review, and it's like the most emotional episode of the 20M podcast, I think, and we have a couple emotional episodes on the 20M podcast. We
have a couple of you being emotional, but like two of us being emotional, I feel at the same time over the same game. I think it hasn't happened since A Space Within Bound. Yeah,
you're right. And you can also check out all our interview episodes with some phenomenal guests over the past couple weeks as well here in the 20M podcast. But at the end of the day, everybody, hang out with us, watch more of our content, tell Rito how much you appreciate the writing, and you'll see some pretty big announcements coming up from us over the next couple of weeks. Thanks for watching this one.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye.